I never thought my life would end up like this. I used to roll my eyes at stories like mine. You know the kind. The ones people whisper about in line at the Safeway. But here I am, 51 years old, hiding in my own bathroom because I can't look my husband in the eye anymore. It's raining outside, steady and grey, tapping on the window above the shower like it's keeping time with my pulse. My coffee's cold on the edge of the sink. I can smell the cinnamon bagels I burned earlier, still lingering in the air. The only sound is my old Samsung buzzing on the floor, vibrating against the cheap tile. I'm Andrea. I live in Dayton, Ohio. Been here my whole life. I've been married to Mark for 24 years. Most days I work from home for a property management company, spreadsheets, tenant complaints, the whole routine. Mark runs a small appliance repair shop on Main Street. Our daughter's away at college. The house feels too big now. I used to feel seen by him. Wanted. Sometimes, I still dream about the way he'd press his hand to the small of my back when we'd walk through Target, just to let me know he was there. Now he mostly grunts hello, buries himself in that ancient La Z boy, ESPN blaring while he eats Chex Mix straight from the bag. I talk. He scrolls his phone. Some nights, we go hours without speaking. I don't think he notices. Or maybe he does, but he's too tired to care. The thing is, I started looking forward to the pings from my work laptop. Messages from our IT guy, Charlie Benson. He's 50, divorced, always has a joke about his dog or some new gadget. It started with harmless check-ins, you good with the new password, or, did you see my meme bomb? Sometimes I'd send a GIF back, and we'd laugh. At first, it was just something to break up the day. Then it turned into late-night Slack messages. Private DMS. We'd talk about anything, favorite bands, old movies, dumb childhood stories. One night, he sent a voice note. Just him, laughing about something his dog did. I listened to it 3 times, just to hear the sound. My cheeks actually got hot. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Just work stuff. Just being friendly. But I started hiding my phone screen from Mark. I waited for Charlie's messages. Sometimes I'd type something, delete it, then type it again. I felt alive, I guess. Wanted. I hadn't felt that in a long time. There's this bottle of boxed wine in the fridge, the kind I used to tease my mom for drinking. Now it's my Friday night ritual. I'll pour a glass, curl up on the couch, and text with Charlie about our days. He tells me things no one else knows. He asks about my dreams, my regrets. Sometimes I want to tell him everything, but I pull back. The guilt's there, sure. I look at Mark and wonder if he knows. Or if he'd even care. There's a kind of ache in my chest I can't shake off. But I keep going. I keep replying. I keep letting Charlie in, inch by inch. Last night, after everyone was asleep, my Samsung buzzed with a new message from him. Wish you were here, just so I could see your smile. My fingers shook as I typed back. I wanted to say something I shouldn't. I almost did. Then I heard the floor creak outside the door. I shoved my phone under the towel pile. I'm not proud of any of this. But I can't stop. This morning, Mark poured himself some coffee, sat down across from me, and just stared for a minute. I waited for him to speak. But all he said was, "We are out of creamer." Then he got up and left the room. Now I'm sitting here, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, wondering how far I'm willing to go. And if I've already gone too far. I couldn't sleep at all last night. I tossed and turned, counting the hours until dawn, just staring at the ceiling and listening to the radiator clank. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message from Charlie, "Wish you were here, just so I could see your smile." His words echoed in the dark, bouncing around my skull like a secret I wasn't ready to confess, not even to myself. The rain let up by morning, leaving everything outside slick and grey. I could hear Mark moving around the kitchen, banging cupboards a little too hard, probably looking for something I forgot to buy. That's the new rhythm of our life. We orbit the same space, but we are never really in it together. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm the ghost or if he is. I got up, shuffled into my slippers, and padded down the hallway, careful not to step on the squeaky floorboard near the bathroom. Old habits die hard. When I reached the kitchen, Mark was hunched over the counter, reading something on his phone. He didn't look up. The Keurig word. The smell of bitter coffee filled the air. "Morning," I said, but my voice sounded far away, even to me. He nodded, eyes still glued to whatever headline had his attention. I poured myself a mug, grabbed a bagel, and sat at the table. The silence was thick, broken only by the occasional slurp or the dull clatter of a spoon. I thought about Charlie, how he'd always have something funny or weird to say at a time like this. Sometimes he'd share random facts about animals, or send a photo of his golden retriever, Max, wearing ridiculous outfits. He even got Max a tiny raincoat last week. He sent me a picture. I laughed so hard, I snorted coffee up my nose. Mark never noticed. After breakfast, I set up my laptop at the dining room table, like I do every weekday. Same old spreadsheet hell, punctuated by emails and pointless Zoom calls. But my eyes kept drifting to the Slack icon, waiting for it to light up. That little red dot, it was the most exciting part of my day. It was almost 10 before Charlie messaged. "Just 3 words, are you awake yet?" I smiled. My heart actually skipped, which made me feel stupid and reckless. Like I was 16 again, passing notes in algebra. "Barely," I typed back. "Monday is trying to kill me." He replied with a gif of a cat falling off a desk, then, "If I were there, I'd make you breakfast. I'd even burn the toast, just to prove I'm real." I tried to ignore the warmth in my cheeks. I tried to ignore the fact that Mark was in the next room, watching reruns and probably wondering why I kept smiling at my screen. But I couldn't help it. Charlie and I kept chatting as I worked, sharing playlists, trading dumb jokes, talking about anything but the real world. He made the day go faster, lighter. It was easy. Too easy. Around noon, he sent, "Wanna hear something crazy? I had a dream about you last night. You were wearing a red dress and laughing at something I said. I woke up wishing it was real." My hands hovered over the keys. For a second, I almost typed something bold. Something like, "Maybe it can be." But I stopped. I stared at the blinking cursor. My chest tightened. That's when the guilt crept in, slow and cold, like a draft through a cracked window. I thought about Mark, how he always worked so hard, how he fixed my car without asking, how he'd held my hand through my mother's funeral, even when I'd pushed him away. I remembered our first apartment, eating ramen on the floor, thinking the world belonged to us. How did we end up here, 2 strangers sharing a roof and a mortgage? I closed my laptop and went to the laundry room, just to get away from my own thoughts. The smell of fabric softener and dryer sheets filled the air, grounding me for a minute. I picked up Mark's work shirt, the one with his name stitched in blue above the pocket. There was a hole near the hem, one I'd promised to fix weeks ago. I felt small. Useless. That afternoon, I drove to Walmart for groceries. Sometimes, when the world gets too loud, I find peace wandering the aisles. I grabbed boxed wine, a pack of Monster energy drinks for Mark, and a new flavor of Pop-Tarts I knew he'd never try. I stood there in the frozen section, staring at bags of peas, wondering if anyone else was hiding a secret as big as mine. My phone buzzed, a text from Charlie. "You busy tonight?" I stared at it. My thumbs hovered. I started to type, then stopped. I deleted what I wrote. My reflection in the freezer door looked tired, drawn, older than I remembered. I realized I was holding my breath. Back home, I cooked dinner, frozen lasagna, store-bought garlic bread, a bagged Caesar salad. Mark barely spoke. He ate in silence, then wandered off to the garage. I sat at the table alone, sipping my boxed wine, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Photos of Mark and me, younger, smiling, arms around each other at county fairs, beach trips, birthday parties. I tried to remember what it felt like, being in love with him. I tried to summon even a flicker of that old warmth. Nothing came. Later, as the house quieted and darkness settled in, I found myself texting Charlie. Our conversation picked up where we left off. Flirting, jokes, memories. I sent him a selfie, just my face, hair a mess, wine glass half full. He wrote, "You look beautiful." I mean it. My hands shook. I wanted to write something honest. Instead, I just sent a smiley face. He replied, "Wish I could see you for real. Just talk. Or not talk." We both knew what that meant. We didn't say it, but the line was getting blurry. Before bed, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, staring at my reflection. I barely recognized the woman in the glass, tired eyes, fading lipstick, shoulders slumped. But there was something else there too, just under the surface. Hunger. Hope. Fear. I kept hearing Mark's footsteps in the hallway, slow and heavy, and wondered if he was just as lonely as I was. I crawled into bed, careful not to wake him, my phone clutched in my hand. Just before I drifted off, another message came through. "If you ever need someone to talk to, or anything, I'm always here." I read it twice. 3 times. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it, either. And as the house settled into silence, I wondered if anyone else was lying awake, heart pounding, balancing on the edge of something they couldn't take back. I started the next morning feeling raw, shaky, like I'd had too much to drink but hadn't touched a drop. The sun was streaming in through the kitchen blinds, turning the laminate counters into stripes of gold and shadow. My Samsung, with its cracked screen, was already buzzing with work emails, but I ignored them. I needed a minute just to breathe. Mark was already gone. I heard the garage door rumble closed 15 minutes earlier, heard the old Chevy cough to life and back down the driveway. He'd left a note by the coffee maker, back by 6. "Need anything?" His handwriting looked tired. I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't write back. There was this weird stillness in the house when he left. It's not peace, exactly. It's more like I can finally exhale. The air even smells different, less cologne, more like laundry soap and whatever candle I burned last night. I poured a cup of coffee, leaning against the counter, the mug warm in my hands. I scrolled through my notifications, looking for Charlie's name. My heart did this stupid little leap when I saw it. "Morning, trouble," he wrote, with a wink emoji. He sent a photo of Max sprawled out on the couch, paws in the air, tongue lolling. I smiled. I really smiled, the kind that makes your cheeks ache. I couldn't remember the last time Mark had made me feel that way. Work was a blur. I did my calls, answered emails, barely remembering what I said. Every spare second, I checked my messages. Charlie and I bounced between Slack and regular texting, talking about everything, his favorite junk food, Taco Bell, which made me laugh, my weird obsession with true crime podcasts, what music we played when we were kids. He even confessed he once dyed his hair purple after a girl dared him in high school. I told him about the time I crashed my mom's minivan trying to impress a boy, and how I never told her the real story. It all felt so light, so easy. Like falling into a memory that was never really mine. He asked questions no one ever asked me anymore. What scares you the most? What's the best day you can remember? What do you wish you could change? Sometimes I'd answer before thinking, just because it felt safe. Sometimes I'd hesitate, and he'd wait for me, not pushing, just there. Around lunchtime, he wrote, "If you could go anywhere right now, no questions asked, where would you go?" I wrote, "A motel by the lake. Just for one night. Just to remember who I am." He sent back, "Say the word. I'd pick you up myself." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I actually put my phone down and walked away, just to breathe. I stared out the back window at our dying tomato plants, brown and wilted in the late summer heat. I pressed my forehead to the glass and tried to imagine a world where I said yes. Tried to imagine a world where I could just run. But I didn't run. I did laundry, folded shirts, picked up Mark's socks, vacuumed the stupid rug that always traps dog hair. The house was silent except for the hum of the dryer and my own thoughts. I felt restless. Like something was crawling under my skin. By the afternoon, the sky had gone dark and heavy. Thunder rattled the windows and rain slapped the roof. I made soup for dinner, the kind that comes in a can, nothing fancy. Mark texted he'd be late. No explanation. Just 3 words. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt emptier than ever. Charlie messaged, "Want to talk?" I typed, "Sure." A few seconds later, my phone rang. Not a voice note. An actual call. I almost didn't answer. I watched the screen vibrate, the little contact photo he used for himself, Max in a pirate hat. It made me laugh, even as my stomach twisted. But I answered. His voice was warm, closer than I expected. He sounded nervous at first, then relaxed. We talked about the storm, about soup, about nothing at all. We talked for an hour. Maybe more. He asked me about my favorite place in the world. I told him about a cabin my family used to rent up by Lake Erie, how I'd sit by the water and pretend I was anywhere but Ohio. He said, "You sound happy when you talk about that." I said, "I wish I was that girl again." There was a long pause. He finally said, "You can be. Maybe not the same, but something new. You just have to want it." The silence between us was loaded. I could hear him breathing, hear my own heart thumping in my chest. It would have been so easy to say something dangerous right then. To ask for more. Instead, I just listened to the rain. He said, "Andrea?" I said, "Yeah." Another pause. "I want to see you. Not just on a screen." I closed my eyes. For a second, I let myself imagine it. Just letting go. Saying yes. Instead, I whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." He said, soft, "Me either. But I know what I want." The call ended with a promise, unspoken but understood. After, I walked through the house, lights off, just my phone in my hand. I could still feel his voice in my ear. I stood by the window, looking out at the street, the rain swirling in the glow of the porch light. When Mark finally came home, he barely looked at me. He tossed his keys in the bowl, kicked off his boots, and went straight to bed. I watched him disappear down the hallway, my heart in my throat, feeling the walls closing in. And for the first time, I wondered if I was already gone. I didn't go to bed right away that night. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, picking at the peeling label on my wine glass, listening to the clock ticking above the stove. There was this heaviness in the air, the kind that settles into your bones when you know you're crossing some invisible line and there's no going back. I kept replaying Charlie's voice in my head. The way he said, "I want to see you. Not just on a screen." The way my whole body reacted, every nerve lit up, every warning bell in my brain muffled by something stronger and wilder. It was like waking up from a deep sleep and not knowing which world is real anymore. I kept checking my phone, half hoping for another message, half terrified he'd actually call again. But the screen stayed dark. I tried to distract myself, wiped down the counters, loaded the dishwasher, even reorganized the spice rack for the millionth time. Nothing helped. The only thing I wanted was the one thing I wasn't supposed to want. Eventually, I wandered into the living room. Mark was already asleep, TV still glowing, remote in his hand, ESPN replaying some game neither of us cared about. I looked at him for a long time. He looked so tired, mouth open just a little, blanket tangled around his legs. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. For both of us. Two people living side by side, lost in different worlds, each too stubborn or scared to say what we really needed. I turned off the TV, covered him with the throw blanket, and went to bed alone. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain and the faint snoring from the next room. My mind kept racing back to Charlie, his laugh, the way he remembered little things about me, how easy it felt just being myself around him. I tried to talk myself out of it, to remember all the reasons not to keep going. But I couldn't. I didn't want to. Sleep finally came, thin and restless. I woke up before dawn, the house still and cold. I made coffee, pulled on a sweatshirt, and curled up on the couch with my knees to my chest, scrolling through old messages from Charlie. Reading them all at once felt like flipping through someone else's diary. There were jokes about bad office coffee, stories about his dog, confessions about his fears and regrets, and, somewhere between all that, the way he made me feel seen, really seen, for the first time in years. I kept thinking about that cabin on Lake Erie I told him about. The last time I was there, I must have been 23. I remember standing on the dock at sunrise, water so still you could see your whole life reflected back at you. I wanted to be that girl again. Brave. Curious. Alive. My phone buzzed. Charlie. Couldn't sleep. Hope you're okay. I stared at the words for a long time before I wrote back, I'm here. Just tired. He sent a little heart. Then, a few seconds later. Can I ask you something crazy? I typed, sure. Will you meet me? Just for coffee. Just to talk. No pressure. I read the message over and over. My heart thudded so loud, I worried it might wake Mark. I started to say no. I even typed it out. Then I deleted it. I thought about the years slipping past, the way I'd watched myself fade into the background of my own life. I thought about how badly I wanted to feel real again. So I wrote, okay. Where? We picked a coffee shop 2 towns over, one of those places where nobody would know us, where we could pretend for an hour that we were just 2 people meeting by chance. We agreed on Wednesday. 2 days away. Just the thought of it made my palms sweat. The next day was torture. Every little thing felt suspicious, like Mark could see right through me. I kept almost blurting it out, just to have it over with, but I couldn't. He barely noticed, anyway. He spent most of the evening in the garage, tinkering with something on the workbench, the smell of oil and dust drifting into the house. I watched him from the window, wondering if he was lonely, too, or if I was the only one drowning in the quiet. When I went to bed, I found him already asleep, back turned to me. I lay awake for hours, going over every possible outcome. What if someone saw me? What if Mark somehow found out? What if Charlie changed his mind? But under all that anxiety was a sharp little thrill, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. Wednesday came faster than I expected. I barely tasted my breakfast. Mark was running late, muttering about a broken water heater and traffic on the interstate. He left in a rush, and as soon as the house was quiet, I got dressed, nothing fancy, just jeans, a gray sweater, a touch of mascara, and my hair tied back. I must have changed my mind 10 times before finally grabbing my purse and heading out the door. Driving to the coffee shop, my hands shook on the wheel. I parked far away, took a deep breath, and went inside. The place smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso, indie rock humming quietly from the speakers. I found a corner table, sat down, and tried to calm myself. When Charlie walked in, I almost didn't recognize him at first. Real life is always a little messier than you imagine. He looked nervous, too, glancing around before spotting me. When our eyes met, something shifted in my chest. We smiled. I stood up, and he hugged me, quick and awkward, but warm. We sat for hours, talking about everything and nothing. We laughed. Sometimes we just sat in silence, comfortable in a way that surprised me. At one point, he reached for my hand across the table, fingers brushing mine. I didn't pull away. When it was time to leave, neither of us wanted to go. We stood in the parking lot, rain misting down, and he touched my arm, soft and hesitant. For a moment, the whole world narrowed to just us. I almost kissed him. I almost let myself. But I didn't. Not yet. Driving home, I felt a mix of terror and hope so sharp it made my eyes water. I kept replaying his smile, his laugh, the feel of his hand on mine. I knew I was closer than ever to falling. I also knew there was no turning back. That night, everything in the house felt a little more fragile, like I was walking across a sheet of glass, careful not to step too hard. Mark was in the kitchen when I came in. He didn't look up from the pile of mail he was sifting through, bills and junk flyers spread across the counter. The radio was playing softly, old rock songs drifting in and out, sometimes fading behind the sound of the fridge humming. "Everything okay at work?" he asked, not turning around. "Yeah. Just the usual craziness," I said, too quickly. My heart was still beating fast from the drive home. I put my purse on the floor by the pantry and hung up my jacket, making sure the sleeves covered the little perfume sample card I'd stuck in my pocket after coffee with Charlie. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the parking lot, how the rain looked silver in his hair, the way he'd brushed my hand with his thumb like he was mimizing my skin. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel it. I started making dinner, grilled cheese, canned tomato soup, the kind we always ate when we were first married and broke, watching old sitcoms in our first apartment. It used to be comfort food. Now it just felt like another routine I couldn't escape. I burned the bread and pretended not to care. Mark sat at the table, scrolling on his phone, tapping the screen like he was angry at it. He didn't ask how my day really was. He didn't notice that my hands shook while I poured the soup. I tried to look at him, to find some trace of the man I'd loved, the one who made me laugh so easily, who'd once danced with me in the living room in his socks just to see me smile. But all I saw was a stranger, tired and gray around the eyes, lost in a world that didn't include me. After dinner, he went to the garage to work on his truck. I washed dishes by hand, letting the hot water scald my fingers, hoping the pain would clear my head. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Charlie. I can't stop thinking about you." I wiped my hands and picked it up, feeling a little thrill in my stomach, the kind I hadn't felt in years. "Me too," I wrote back, before I could talk myself out of it. He replied almost instantly. "You free tomorrow?" I looked at the calendar. Mark would be at the shop until late, inventory night. The house would be empty. "I could be," I typed. Charlie sent a heart emoji. "I want to see you. Really see you." I leaned against the counter, feeling dizzy. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say no. I wanted a million things, none of them safe. I thought about the coffee shop, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. I thought about the years I'd spent waiting for someone to see me, really see me. I typed, "Come over after lunch. I'll make coffee." The rest of the night blurred. Mark came in from the garage smelling like oil and sweat, his hands black with grease. He kissed the top of my head, an old habit, but it felt almost accidental. He took a shower, watched the news, and fell asleep on the couch. I sat beside him, not touching, not speaking, feeling the divide between us widen with every passing minute. I kept thinking about the girl I used to be, the one who believed in happy endings, who never thought she'd keep secrets from the man she promised forever. I tried to remember what hope felt like before it turned into guilt. I stared at the TV, but I couldn't tell you what we watched. My mind was somewhere else, already planning the next day. I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed of water, a lake, wide and dark, and me standing at the edge, wanting to dive in but afraid I'd never come back up. I woke up sweaty and cold, heart pounding, throat tight with fear and anticipation. Mark left early for work. He didn't say goodbye. I watched him pull out of the driveway, his taillights vanishing into the mist, and I felt relief and regret at the same time. I showered, cleaned the house until it sparkled, changed my sheets, and tried on 3 different shirts before settling on a soft blue one Charlie once said brought out my eyes. When he knocked, I almost didn't answer. My hands shook so bad I thought I dropped the mug I was holding. But I opened the door, and there he was, Max's hair clinging to his jacket, nervous smile on his face. We stood in the kitchen, laughing about nothing, both of us pretending this was normal. He reached for my hand, and this time, I didn't pull away. The world felt small, just the two of us and the sound of my old coffee maker sputtering in the background. We talked, we laughed, and then, almost without thinking, I leaned in. Our lips met, soft at first, then desperate. Every warning I'd given myself vanished. There was no room for fear or doubt, only the two of us, tangled in each other's arms, breathless, forgetting everything except how it felt to be wanted. When it was over, we lay on the couch, limbs tangled, listening to the slow ticking of the clock. I traced patterns on his arm, my heart hammering in my chest. I never thought I'd do this, I whispered. Me either, he said. But I don't regret it. I closed my eyes, willing myself to believe it was real, that this moment could last. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same. I'd crossed a line, and there was no way back. The next morning, everything felt louder. Every sound in the house, the squeak of the bathroom faucet, the whine of the coffee grinder, the beep of my phone, set my nerves on edge. It was like my whole body was tuned to a different frequency, too aware, too alive, and somehow more brittle than before. I tried to act normal, moving through my routine with shaky hands and a sick flutter in my stomach. The air felt thick with secrets. Mark was still asleep when I got up, one arm flung over the side of the bed, mouth half open. I stared at him for a long moment, wondering how we ended up here, two people drifting further apart, even as we slept in the same bed. I felt a spike of guilt that nearly knocked the breath out of me. I wanted to reach for him, but I couldn't. Not after what I'd done. I made coffee, stared out the kitchen window as the sun started to rise behind the trees. The street was quiet, just the neighbor's dog barking at nothing and the garbage truck clattering down the block. My phone buzzed, a simple "thank you for yesterday" from Charlie, followed by a heart. I read it 3 times, then tucked my phone in my pocket before Mark could wake up and see. I tried to convince myself it was a mistake. That it would stop here. That I could put this all back in the box, seal the lid, pretend it never happened. But as I moved through the day, folding laundry, answering work emails, microwaving leftovers, I kept replaying every second from yesterday, from the way Charlie's hands found my waist to the look on his face when he finally let himself be honest. No one had looked at me like that in years. I kept checking my phone, even when I told myself not to. Charlie sent me songs, little memes, a photo of Max looking ridiculous in a Halloween costume. Each time, I felt that mixture of joy and dread, as if I was 16 again, sneaking around behind my parents' backs. Only now the stakes were so much higher. I kept wondering if Mark could tell, if he noticed the way I blushed when my phone buzzed, or the way I kept spacing out over dinner. He seemed more distracted than usual that night. He barely touched his food, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. At one point he looked up, caught me watching him, and frowned. "You okay?" I nodded too quickly, voice too bright. Just tired, that's all. He grunted and went back to whatever he was reading. I washed the dishes alone, my thoughts spinning. Every little noise made me jump. I kept expecting the universe to punish me, for everything to come crashing down. But nothing happened. Mark turned on the TV, kicked off his shoes, and I sat across the room, pretending to watch but seeing nothing. That night, in bed, he reached for me. It was awkward, almost painful, the kind of intimacy built on routine and obligation. I let him, not knowing what else to do. I tried to feel something, love, guilt, even anger. But all I felt was numb. When he rolled away, I lay awake, staring into the dark, hating myself for the emptiness in my chest. The days blurred together after that. I kept telling myself it was a one-time thing. That I could stop whenever I wanted. But the truth was, I didn't want to stop. Charlie and I started texting all the time, good mornings, good nights, silly things, serious things. He became the first person I thought of when I woke up and the last before I fell asleep. It was like living a double life, one foot in the world I'd built with Mark, the other in a place where I finally felt awake. We met again. I told myself it was just coffee, just talking. But we both knew it was more. Every touch lingered, every glance felt loaded. We stopped pretending we were just friends. It was electric, and terrifying, and I couldn't get enough. One afternoon, after Mark called to say he'd be home late again, I let Charlie come over. We barely made it to the couch before we were tangled up in each other, desperate, clumsy, laughing and breathless. It felt like freedom and destruction all at once. Afterwards, he held me for a long time, neither of us speaking. There was a quiet between us that felt almost sacred. For the first time in years, I felt wanted, needed. I felt like myself. But then the world crashed back in. I saw a missed call from Mark on my phone. My heart jumped. Charlie kissed my forehead. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to choose right now." But I knew that wasn't true. Every day, the risk got bigger. Every lie a little heavier. I started to notice the little things, how Mark would leave his phone face down on the table, or how he started checking my calendar, asking more questions than usual. There was a tension in the house I couldn't explain away. It was as if Mark could sense something was wrong but didn't know where to look. One evening, as I was folding laundry, I found an old photo, Mark and me on the beach, sunburned and grinning, arms around each other like we belonged to the world. I stared at it for a long time, grief and longing twisting together. I didn't know how to go back to that place, or if I even wanted to. That night, as I climbed into bed, my phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't check it right away. I lay there in the dark, listening to Mark breathing beside me, feeling the weight of everything I'd done settle in my bones. I wondered how long it would be before the truth came out. I wondered if I'd have the courage to tell it myself, or if I'd let the world rip it out of me. Either way, I knew something was coming. And I was terrified. It was a Saturday when everything finally started to unravel. The morning was warm for October, sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, making dust motes spin in the air like fireflies. I stood there barefoot, holding my second mug of coffee, staring at the mess on the counter, crusty peanut butter jar, half a loaf of white bread, crumbs everywhere. Mark had already left for the shop. He'd taken an early call, something about a busted refrigerator across town, and barely spoke as he grabbed his keys and headed out the door. For a while, the house felt peaceful. I threw open the windows, let the breeze in, and tried to enjoy the quiet. I even let myself believe I could hold it together, just for a little longer. I had plans with Charlie. We'd texted late into the night, talking about a road trip to the coast, the kind we both used to dream about before life got in the way. It was just fantasy, but it made me feel lighter, braver, even if only for a few hours. Around noon, I took a shower, put on a fresh shirt, and picked out my favorite earrings. My phone buzzed on the dresser, Charlie, letting me know he was on his way. I glanced at the clock, feeling a flicker of nerves, the kind that always hit before we saw each other. I should have felt guilty. I did, in a way. But mostly, I felt alive. My heart raced, my hands trembled, but I wanted him there. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be chosen. When he knocked, I let him in without thinking, barely glancing through the blinds. He looked tired but happy, a little rumpled, holding 2 coffees from the fancy place across town. We laughed about nothing, talked in whispers, moved through the kitchen together like we'd done it 1,000 times. It felt dangerous, but it also felt normal. We ended up on the couch, legs tangled, his hand tracing circles on my knee. I let myself get lost in the moment, his warmth, the way he made me feel wanted, the way he listened. There was a kind of hunger between us, the kind that only grows the longer you try to starve it. When he kissed me, I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. The world shrank down to his mouth on mine, the taste of coffee, the scrape of his stubble against my cheek. We didn't hear the car pull in. Didn't hear the front door open. Only when Max barked, a sharp, startled yelp, did we freeze, eyes wide, bodies tense. My mind went blank for a second, panic shooting through me like a jolt of electricity. I heard Mark's voice from the hallway. "Andrea?" Charlie scrambled off the couch, heart pounding so loud I thought it might echo down the hall. I straightened my shirt, hands shaking, and called out, trying to sound casual. "In here." Mark stepped into the living room, toolbox in hand, sweat on his brow. His eyes swept the room, taking in the empty coffee cups, the awkward space between Charlie and me, the way we couldn't quite meet his gaze. He stopped, brow furrowing, lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "I didn't know we had company," he said, voice flat. Charlie cleared his throat, trying to act normal, but his hands gave him away. "Just came by to drop off a book Andrea loaned me," he lied. His voice wavered, and I could see the nerves in the way he gripped the back of the armchair. Mark didn't say anything for a long moment. The silence stretched, heavy as wet concrete. I could feel the room closing in, the air turning sharp. My heart raced so hard I thought I might faint. Finally, Mark set down his toolbox. "Well, hope you two enjoyed your coffee," he said, not looking at either of us. He turned on his heel and walked down the hallway, footsteps echoing through the house. Charlie grabbed his jacket, face pale. "I should go," he whispered. I nodded, throat too tight to speak. He squeezed my hand, just for a second, and slipped out the back door. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, not knowing whether to run or collapse. The house was silent except for the ticking clock and the low hum of the refrigerator. I could hear Mark in the bedroom, drawers opening and closing, the metallic rattle of keys. I braced myself, waiting for him to come storming out, to scream, to demand answers. But he didn't. Instead, he reappeared in the doorway, holding something in his hand. It was a receipt, faded, crumpled, from the motel out on Route 12. My breath caught. I hadn't even realized I'd kept it, tucked in my purse, forgotten. He didn't say a word. He just held it up, his eyes searching my face for something, an answer, maybe, or an apology. I felt my whole life unravel in that instant, every lie, every stolen hour, every text and glance and touch laid bare. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. Mark finally spoke, his voice quiet, almost broken. "How long, Andrea?" I stared at him, at the man I'd shared half my life with, and I couldn't look away from the hurt in his eyes. The silence stretched out, endless. I realized, in that moment, there was no more hiding. No more pretending. Everything I'd tried so hard to keep separate had come crashing together, and I couldn't undo it. I heard Charlie's car pull away outside, the engine fading down the street. Mark stood there, waiting. And all I could do was stand there, caught between everything I wanted and everything I'd just destroyed, the truth ringing in my ears. We were finally, painfully, exposed. I don't remember how long we stood there, just staring at each other across the room, Mark holding that receipt like it was a loaded gun. My mouth was so dry I could barely breathe. I opened it, closed it, tried to find words, but my thoughts were just noise, regret, shame, terror, 1,000 apologies that wouldn't have meant a thing. Finally, he set the receipt down on the table, careful and precise, like it might explode if he let it drop. He didn't move toward me. He just watched, his face pale and drawn, every muscle tense. For a moment, he looked older than I'd ever seen him. I wanted to go to him, but my legs wouldn't work. I felt nailed to the floor. "I guess I always knew," he said, barely above a whisper. I just didn't want to see it. The words knocked the air out of me. I could feel the dam cracking inside, everything I'd been trying to hold back for weeks threatening to spill out. I wanted to confess, to tell him everything, the loneliness, the ache, how it started with just messages and ended up as something I never thought I was capable of. But when I tried to speak, nothing came. He shook his head, a sad little smile twisting his mouth. "I always thought we were solid, you know. Even when we argued. Even when we drifted." His voice faltered, and I saw tears shining in his eyes. "When did you stop loving me?" That cut deeper than anything. "I never stopped," I blurted, and as soon as I said it, I hated how much it sounded like a lie. I just felt invisible. Like I was living someone else's life. Like you'd stopped seeing me. He blinked, silent for a moment. Maybe I did. Maybe we both did. He dropped into a kitchen chair, head in his hands, breathing hard. "God, Andrea, why didn't you just tell me?" "I was scared," I whispered. "Scared you'd hate me. Scared I'd ruin everything." He laughed, harsh and short, rubbing his face. "You already did." I sank down across from him, folding my hands tight in my lap. The kitchen was full of late afternoon light, but it felt cold. I kept thinking about all the times I'd walked through this room, making dinner, folding laundry, talking about our day like nothing was wrong. I tried to picture those days coming back, but all I could see was the wall between us, higher than ever. He sat there for a long time, not moving, not looking at me. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking, the faint rumble of traffic outside, the normal sounds of a world that hadn't stopped spinning just because ours had. Mark finally spoke, voice flat and distant. "How long has this been going on?" I stared at the table, counting the wood grain, the scratches and nicks from years of life. "A few months. Maybe longer, if you count all the times I wanted to tell you and didn't." He nodded, jaw clenched. "Was it just him? Or just Charlie?" I said, my voice cracking. "It wasn't planned. I never meant for it to go this far." He nodded again, and this time it felt final, like a verdict. I waited for him to yell, to throw something, to storm out, but he just looked empty. "Do you love him?" The question hit me hard. I stared at my hands, picking at my cuticle until it hurt. "I don't know. I know I needed something. I needed to feel like I mattered." Mark laughed again, this time softer, more wounded than angry. "Yeah. I get it. I really do." He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. "But you broke us, Andrea. You broke something I don't know how to fix." My vision blurred, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I'm sorry," I said. "I really am." He looked away, out the window at the yard we'd worked so hard to build, the flower beds he used to eat every weekend, the swing set where our daughter learned to pump her legs and fly. "I don't know what to do," he said. "I don't know if I can stay. I don't know if I even want to." I felt my heart drop. The finality in his voice, the way he said stay like it was a foreign word, made me realize how far we'd fallen. I wanted to beg him to forgive me, to start over, to try and find our way back. But I knew better. You can't undo this. You can't wish it away. He stood, walked to the sink, and stared out the window for a long time. I listened to the pipes creak, the fridge kick on, every sound stretched thin. When he finally turned around, he looked tired, almost calm. I'm going to stay at my brother's for a while, he said. I need to think. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He walked down the hall, packed a bag in silence. I stood in the kitchen, arms wrapped around myself, shivering even though the sun was still shining. I heard the front door open, the sound of keys jangling, and then it closed. The house was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. I sat down at the table, head in my hands, letting the tears come. There was no one left to hide from, no lies left to tell. Somewhere outside, a car pulled away. And just like that, everything was different. For the first time in years, I was truly, painfully alone. I didn't move for a long time after Mark left. The sunlight stretched across the kitchen floor, crawling toward evening, but I just sat there, hollowed out and numb. The house felt too big, every noise exaggerated, the tick of the wall clock, the groan of the fridge, the distant whir of a neighbor's lawn mower. It was like I was living in an echo of my old life, except now there was no one to talk to, no footsteps in the hallway, just the constant replay of everything I'd done. I tried to call my daughter, but she didn't answer. I thought about leaving a voicemail, telling her everything, but what could I even say? Hey, sweetheart, I blew up our family because I got lonely. I couldn't do it. I hung up, pressing the phone to my forehead, trying to swallow the guilt. For a while, I just wandered the house, touching old things like they might anchor me to some version of myself that wasn't a stranger. I found the cardigan Mark gave me for our 15th anniversary, buried in the back of the closet, soft and faded at the sleeves. I ran my hand along the edge of the dining table where we used to play cards after dinner, laughing until we cried, back when love was easy and forgiveness was free. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. For a split second, I hoped it was Mark. But it was Charlie. Are you okay? Simple, but loaded. I stared at the message, feeling the ache in my chest all over again. I thought about ignoring it. About ghosting him, erasing everything we'd been, pretending I could somehow make this all disappear. But I couldn't. I typed back, Mark knows. He left. He replied almost instantly. I'm sorry. I never wanted this. I closed my eyes, tears burning hot. I wanted to scream. I wanted someone to tell me what to do, how to fix any of this, how to breathe with all this weight in my chest. But no one could. This was the bed I'd made, and now I had to lie in it. Charlie called, his name flashing on my screen. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was gentle, uncertain. Andrea? Talk to me. I choked out a laugh. I don't know what to say. It's all ruined. He's gone. I don't even know who I am anymore. He was quiet for a moment. You're not alone. You know that, right? I wanted to believe him. I wanted his comfort, the way he always seemed to make the world feel a little less sharp. But tonight, even his voice couldn't reach me. I need time, I whispered. I need to figure out what's left. Whatever you need, he said softly. I'm here. No pressure. The call ended, leaving me in silence. I set the phone down, suddenly exhausted. Later, I went through the motions of making dinner, scrambled eggs, toast, whatever I could manage. I stood at the sink, eating straight from the pan, because setting the table for one was too much to bear. I kept thinking about all the times Mark and I had made breakfast for dinner on Sundays, the easy rhythm of our old life, the casual intimacy I'd traded away for something I couldn't even name. I wandered the house, the emptiness pressing in. I ended up in the guest room, the one with the broken lamp and the faded floral sheets. I curled up on the bed, phone in hand, scrolling through photos, vacations, birthdays, a million tiny moments that made up a marriage. I searched our faces, trying to pinpoint when things started to fade, when I started to disappear. I wanted to find a single moment, a crack I could wedge open and say, this is where it all went wrong. But there wasn't one. It was just years of slow drift, of both of us getting tired and letting go, one little compromise at a time. I texted my daughter. Hey, just wanted to hear your voice. Call me when you can. I didn't say more. I didn't know how. As night settled in, the house felt even emptier. The ache in my chest sharpened, but there was also something else, a strange clarity, cold and clean. I'd been so desperate to be seen, to feel alive, that I hadn't stopped to think about what it would cost. Now I was paying for it, every second stretching out, raw and real. But there was no one left to blame but myself. My phone buzzed again. Charlie. Do you want me to come over? Just to talk? I almost said yes. God, I wanted someone to fill this space, to wrap me up, to tell me it would all be okay. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I typed back, not tonight. I need to be alone. I put the phone down, turned off the lights, and let the darkness settle in. I listened to the silence, to the sound of my own breath, to the life I'd broken with 1,000 small choices. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. I knew I couldn't undo what I'd done. I couldn't go back. But I also couldn't keep hiding from the mess I'd made. Somewhere in the quiet, I promised myself that tomorrow I would try. Not to fix everything, not to beg for forgiveness, but to start telling the truth, even if it hurt. Even if it meant standing alone. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, I realized that was all I had left. Just myself. The next morning, sunlight found its way through the slats in the blinds, painting thin stripes across the bedroom wall. For a few seconds, half awake, I forgot everything that had happened. My hand reached to the other side of the bed, expecting warmth, but found only cool, empty sheets. That tiny moment of peace vanished as reality rushed in. I was alone. I was the one who'd made it this way. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind looping through memories. Mark's laugh when he'd win at cards. The first time he let me drive his precious old pickup, pretending not to care when I stalled it. Even the dumb little fights about grocery lists or whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher, they all took on a golden glow, distant and precious, now that I'd lost them. It's cruel, how regret sharpens your memories, making you long for what you can't have. Eventually, I dragged myself out of bed, made coffee, and stood in the kitchen watching the steam curl up into the air. I hadn't eaten much in days. I poured myself a bowl of cereal, but it just got soggy as I stared at my phone, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. But there were no new messages. Not from Mark. Not from my daughter. Not even from Charlie. The house was so quiet, it almost felt like it was holding its breath. I wandered from room to room, trying to keep busy. I made the bed, wiped down the counters, watered the dying houseplants. I found myself opening Mark's closet, running my fingers over his shirts, breathing in the faint scent of his aftershave. I pressed my forehead to the door, letting a wave of grief wash over me. Then I closed it again, careful, gentle, as if I might disturb a sleeping animal. My phone buzzed once, and my heart jumped. It was a calendar reminder, our wedding anniversary, 3 days away. For a second, I almost laughed at the cruelty of it. What was I supposed to do? Celebrate the funeral of our marriage with boxed wine and old wedding photos? I wanted to scream. Instead, I deleted the reminder, the act feeling final in a way nothing else had so far. Mid-morning, I went for a walk, needing air and motion, anything to drown out my thoughts. The neighborhood was full of normal life, kids waiting for the bus, an older couple raking leaves, someone mowing the lawn. Everyone seemed so solid, so together, while I felt like I was floating above myself, watching my own shadow drift down the sidewalk. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a car window, drawn, pale, someone I barely recognized. I looked away. Back home, I made myself sit down with a pen and paper. I didn't know what I was trying to do, make sense of what happened, apologize, confess? Maybe all of it. I started a letter to Mark. I wrote 3 pages before I ripped them up. Nothing sounded right. It was all excuses, all pain. I realized there was nothing I could write that would erase what I'd done. Around noon, my daughter finally called. My heart twisted as I answered, trying to sound normal. She didn't ask about Dad, but her voice was cautious, careful, as if she knew the ground had shifted. We talked about school, her new roommate, some tests she was worried about. I could tell she was skirting around the edges, waiting for me to say something real. When she finally asked, "Are you okay, Mom?" I almost broke down. I told her I was fine. She didn't believe me, but she let it go. After the call, I just sat there, staring at the wall. My hands felt empty. I scrolled through my messages with Charlie, rereading the old threads, trying to remember what drew me to him in the first place. The thrill, the laughter, the feeling of being wanted, now it just felt like a different life. I wanted to text him, to ask him what we were now, if anything. I didn't. A couple hours later, Charlie did text. "Thinking about you. Let me know if you want to talk." I stared at the screen. There was a comfort in knowing he was still there, still willing to be my lifeline. But I was tired of running. Tired of hiding. I typed back, "I need to be on my own for a bit. I hope you understand." He replied, "Always. Whatever you need." I put my phone away. The house felt quieter than ever, but there was a strange sense of relief, too. No more lies. No more covering tracks. Just me, facing the mess I'd made, one day at a time. That night, I made myself a real dinner, grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, the way I used to cook when I cared. I set the table for one, poured a glass of water, sat in the hush of the empty kitchen. I tried to savor the food, the solitude. Tried to imagine a life where I could forgive myself. Afterward, I wandered through the house, flicking off lights, tucking myself into bed early. I listened to the quiet, to my own breathing, to the ache that had become so familiar I almost missed it when it faded for a few moments. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought about all the endings I'd imagined, explosive fights, dramatic goodbyes, bitter revenge. But the truth was softer, more ordinary, a quiet house, a cool pillow, and the possibility that maybe, with time, I could learn to live with what I'd done. And as midnight came and went, I realized I was still here. Alone. But still standing. And that had to be enough.